Hello, what is up, you guys? It is your girl. This is my very first YouTube video, so I hope you guys bear with me. I know the background looks a little crazy, but it doesn't matter because I'm here for the right reasons. So I just wanted to talk about the story of Joseph today and give you guys some of the revelation that God has given me and some of the things that I learned while I was reading the story of Joseph. So I'll go ahead and get started. I don't want this video to be super long, I just want you guys to get what you need to hear from this. So we'll dive right in. So the first thing is, in the story of Joseph, if you haven't read the story of Joseph, I highly recommend you go read it and get discernment for yourself as well. But I'll be taking little bits and pieces out of it, because I don't want to get that misconstrued. But in the beginning, Joseph's brothers hated him. They strongly disliked him. They did not like him. And I feel like that kind of represents when God sets you apart, whenever you decide to accept God as your Lord and Savior, and other people will try and dim your light. They don't even, and honestly I feel like it kind of starts before that, because for me, and I'm going to share my own testimony in some of this as well, bits and pieces of it. In my own testimony, when I was younger, a lot of people treated me differently, and I never realized why they treated me differently. And I used to say that Joseph's brothers in this story can also be people in your life. So in Genesis 37:4, it says, "But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them." And I know that in this instance it's talking about Joseph's father, Israel, but like I said, Joseph's brothers can represent the people in your life, because before I even found God, or right up into it, a lot of people didn't like me. There was a lot of people who hated me, and some of the things that I did, but also just because they didn't, and it was probably because they seen something in me that I didn't even know, because God is with you that whole time, even before you accept Him as your Lord and Savior. He's with you the whole time. So with Joseph's brothers representing the people in your life, whenever Joseph told them about his dream about his brothers bowing down to him, in Genesis 37:8, they responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. And this literally reminds me of when I told people I wanted to follow God, I wanted to follow Christ. And when I tell you, the biggest thing that made me stumble was people's discouragement. I'd be like, I'm gonna follow Christ, I'm gonna change my life, can't go out with you guys anymore, I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna drink, and I tell you, oh, you're holier than thou, oh, but you're still sinning, you're still drinking, you're still doing this, you're still doing that. And because of that, because I wasn't completely out of sin and didn't jump into a relationship with God, and I was completely sinless, righteous, and holy, I was like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I'm saying? Not knowing that we are sinful creatures and that we need God to cleanse us, and that we die daily to our sins. But just in pertaining to this, that people are going to say things about your walk with Christ. In Matthew it says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of me." Jesus was persecuted, you know what I'm saying? And so we're going to be persecuted as well. It still happens to me now, even though I don't do the same things that I used to do. People still say things in different ways, like, "Oh, your God allowed this to happen to you." I promise you, people will always have things to say, and I just say that because, like I said, that was a big thing for me, why I kept holding back on my relationship with God, because those comments would linger in my head, and then Satan would get in my head, and he would let those spit even more lies, but So then, but turn it around with, even though bad people, or people in your life who don't want the best for you whenever you go into Christ, they see the light in you. There will be good things that come with people seeing the light in you. In Genesis 39:3, it says, when his master saw the Lord was with him, and the Lord gave him success in everything he did. So at this time, this is when Joseph got traded. His brothers wanted to kill him, then he ended up getting sold off. And Potiphar, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Potiphar, he ended up in his care, and as Joseph ended up as Potiphar's servant. And so that's what I was saying. People will see that light in you, and they will give you things like, and for me, like, this goes to my story, like, somebody saw a light in me, and they gave me an opportunity. Like seriously, like it'll happen. It sounds crazy, but it'll happen. People will see the goodness of God in you. Somebody walked up to me, and it's even as simple as somebody was like, I was seeing you walking, and there was just something about you. Like, you were beautiful, but there was just something about you. And like, those are the things that you want people to say about you, because like I said, not only do they open doors, but they can change lives. Because I know for me, I see that light in other people, and it makes me want to get to know God even more, So another thing with that, it was Genesis 39:21-23 said, the Lord was with him, Joseph. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison ward. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. For me, I pay attention to repetition in the Bible, because it said that twice in the Bible, and how it's important that God paid so much attention and detail to Joseph that he made him successful in everything that he did. We'll get into that a little later. But whenever Joseph got caught in a situation in the story, and then he ended up out of Potiphar's care, and he ended up sending him to a dungeon because of something that he was accused of. And even the warden saw a gift in Joseph. Like, everybody that came across Joseph saw something in him, saw God's light in him, and then they gave him a great job. You know what I'm saying? They trusted him. Not even that, they just trusted him. Potiphar trusted him with everything. Potiphar trusted Joseph with everything, and the warden trusted Joseph with everything. And he wasn't even work as a prison guard. You're trusting a prisoner with everything. So and the story, talking about how Joseph ended up in the dungeon, this is when Satan will tempt you, guys. Satan will tempt you in your walk. And Joseph came across Potiphar's wife, and she wanted Jiboy. She was trying to get her some, and Joseph was like, no, we're not doing none of that. He's like, I respect my master, and I'm obedient to the Lord. So no ma'am, no ham, no turkey. No, we're not doing that. And so then she calls herself trying to play him. And then he ends up leaving his robe at the house. And then, what's it called? She ends up leaving the robe at the house. And she's like, babe, your servant Joseph, he tried to do something to me. He tried to rape me. And you should handle that. Because Joseph didn't want her. He wasn't going to disobey God. So that's why Joseph got sent to the dungeon. He got sent to prison. So, but let me tell you guys, Joseph's obedience is like none, because Joseph says, no one is greater in this house than I am. And this is where he talks about Potiphar put Joseph in charge of everything. Joseph realized his status in the house. He said, my master has withheld nothing from me except you. Obviously, he couldn't have Potiphar's wife. He said, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Day after day. Day after day. That's why it's so important. That verse, I can't remember what it is, but to die to your flesh daily, because you guys, and in that story it talks about how she came and then left, and then she came, and then that's when it says day after day. You guys, Joseph had to tell her no day after day. And if I'm correct, during this time, I don't think he had a wife. He didn't even have a wife. He had a reason to sleep with her. I mean, why not, in a sense? You know, I mean, I already have everything. But he realized and he recognized that I already have what I need. And even more than that, he said, why would I sin against God and do such a wicked thing? And we have to treat our lives like that. That when when temptation comes against us, we have to say the same things. Why would we want to sin against God? Why would we want to displease God? We're supposed to be living a life pleasing to God. You know, we're supposed to be making God happy. And so I just think that that's such a powerful thing, that day after day, Joseph was like, no, no, no. And he just made that statement, because it just encourages me to be like, temptation isn't going to be a once in a month thing. There's going to be temptation over, especially when you're trying to get delivered for something. Temptation is going to be on your neck, and you have to constantly be like, no. So then, while Joseph is in prison, he meets some of Pharaoh's servants. So Potiphar, he was King Pharaoh's captain of something. I can't remember exactly what it was. So he had some status, but King Pharaoh, you know, the man, the king. So that's when he ended up sending two of his cupbearer and his baker. He was sending them to the dungeon. And that's whenever they seen Joseph and they had dreams. And Joseph said, they said, we both had dreams. They answered, but there's no one to interpret them. Then Joseph said, do not interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams. And this is Genesis 48. And this is important. It seems small, but I feel like it's important because this is Joseph acknowledging that his gift of interpreting dreams belongs to God, that this is a gift from God. He said, do not interpretations belong to God. He didn't say, I can interpret your dreams, this is what I do. No. He said, do not interpretations belong to God. And I feel like, you know, that's what he's saying, is that, and I feel like we have to do that in our lives, that we have to give our gifts back to God, that they belong to God, that God gave them to us, you know. Then in Genesis 41:39 it says, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. And I feel like this goes back to, you know, like this is a little later, but it's important because Pharaoh acknowledges Joseph and his gift, but he acknowledges it in such a way that God gave it to him. He said, God has made all of this known to you. There's no one discerning and as wise as you, because God did that. And even King Pharaoh, someone who doesn't believe in God, sees that and acknowledges that, you know. So it's just important that the gifts that we have and the gifts that God gives us, just remember that they belong to God. So give them back to him. So then we're going to get into what we all love. We all love it. Joseph stewarded what he was told to do and trusted with. So I say this because we have to remember, I know we hear this a lot, and I don't want to say a lot of the things that I say are cliches, but I feel like when you gain an understanding in your relationship with God, you understand what some of the things that you've heard so many times mean. So I can't remember what chapter it's in, but those who are faithful in little things will be faithful in big things. And that's what Joseph exemplified. So when I say that, I mean Genesis 41, 48 through 49. It says, Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain like the sand of the sea, and it was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. I say this because, you guys, okay, so again, it's important to read the story because during this part, Joseph already knew, he already interpreted King Pharaoh's dream and knew there was going to be a famine. So with this being said, Joseph could have kept some for himself. Joseph could have been moving a little shiesty. He could have said, I have a wife and I have a kid, I have a family I need to take care of, and there was plentiful beyond measure that he stopped counting. So the fact that he stopped counting, there was so much that nobody would have even noticed if it was gone. So why not take a little? You know what I'm saying? But he didn't. He took everything and he put it away and stored it as he was supposed to. And that's why I said those who are faithful in little things will be faithful in bigger things and more things. And I feel like it's just, I just hate to keep repeating myself, but I'm not gonna do myself. But the next thing is Genesis 40:12. So this is what I mean. Back up a bit. This is what I mean when I say those who be faithful in many little things will be faithful in big things. Genesis 40:12. This is what it means. Joseph said to him whenever he was interpreting the dream in the dungeon to King Pharaoh's servants who got kicked down there, got shabooted. So that's, and I feel like, so that's where the analogy goes, those who be faithful in little things, when Joseph was interpreting the dream for his servants. And then those who be faithful in little things, interpreting for the servants, will be faithful in big things, interpreting the dream for King Pharaoh. And I know that doesn't sound big, but because he was faithful in little things, the servants went back and told Pharaoh whenever he needed someone to interpret his dream. He said, oh, I remember someone back in the day, way back when, he was interpreting my dreams. Homeboy got a little gift. Check him out. So, and that's why it's important, because if Joseph never stewarded that in the right way, he still would have been in the dungeon, because the servants would have never had Pharaoh had anything to tell Pharaoh about Joseph. So that when you steward little things, and when you steward little things and you pay attention to them, you don't know what they can turn into. And then you get the bigger thing, and then you could steward that as well, like you're supposed to. And God trusts you to, because you did what you were supposed to on that little intimate thing that you think doesn't really matter, but it does. Going into that, I think that sometimes we think we have normal jobs, or we do, just because we're not a pastor, we're not a king, we're not a Beyonce, I don't know, we're not a Viola Davis, we're not a CEO, we're not a manager, that we think we can't make a difference. But hear me when I say that Joseph was not a king. He was not a pastor. He was not a captain. He didn't have a big title. I mean, in a sense, if you ask me, he was still a servant. I mean, when you look back in there, they still called him a servant. And even though he wasn't just a regular citizen, he was still a servant under masters. He still had managers. He still had a CEO. You know what I'm saying? And I say that to say, because Joseph ended up saving all of Egypt and all the other cities because of the famine. He ended up saving his own family. So when that famine happened, because Joseph was able to interpret it, he was able to store all of the crops and the wheat and stuff like that as the job that Pharaoh gave him, and he stewarded that in the right way as well. And then the famine happened, and all the cities came to Egypt. They ended up coming to Egypt, where Joseph was. King Pharaoh didn't sit there and pull all those crops. King Pharaoh didn't interpret his own dream. Joseph did. And that's why I feel like it's important to know that you don't have to be the king to do something so great in your life. Joseph wasn't a king, and he saved so many people's lives. He saved thousands of people's lives in his own land of Egypt and the other cities, you guys. So, and I just think that's a big deal, because, you know, sometimes for me, I be moving through the motions like, God, what is this? Why am I here? You know, what am I supposed to be doing here? Need a little. But even in your little things, you can do even more. I mean, nobody was worried about the king when they were hungry. They were looking for Joseph. Where is the guy with the food who was saving the crops this whole time? Where is Joseph? Nobody's thinking about King Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? So I say that to say that your normal job is not a normal job when it comes to the kingdom of God, because every job matters. You know, so shepherd it and steward it in the right way, because it'll come into great fruition, whether it's 100 people or 100,000 people. I feel like I've been talking for forever. That's okay. I love sharing what God has given to me with you guys. It's such an honor and a blessing. So lastly, to wrap it up, let me back up a bit. Sorry guys. When I said Joseph ended up saving all of Egypt and all the other cities in his own family, and he didn't do that king status, he didn't do that CEO status, he didn't do that six-figure status. In Genesis 45:7 it says, "But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you for a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." I'm gonna let God discern that one for you. I'm just like, and the way that Joseph looked at that is so beautiful, because I think prior to that he said, I believe he said, don't be discouraged. This is whenever he revealed himself to his brothers. He said, don't be mad at me. You know, because they thought his brother was dead. Their brother was dead. They didn't know where he was. But he said, don't be mad at me for, you know, God sent me ahead of you to preserve you, because he got sold for a purpose. God literally sent them ahead. If he was never sold, he wouldn't have been able to save all of Egypt, you guys. So I said, that little job of yours that you think is little ain't so little. So last part. We're getting there. We're getting somewhere. I promise you. Alright guys, as God restored all of Joseph's family, let me tell you about the great Almighty, about my God, about our God. Because when I tell you God has a plan for our lives, and he'll do what he said he's going to do. Jeremiah 29:11, "For God knows the plans for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a future and a hope." Listen here. Okay, so Genesis 45:18. "And bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land in Egypt, and you can enjoy the fats of the land." This is what Pharaoh told Joseph when Joseph realized those are his brothers, yada yada. Go read the story for yourself. So this is where Joseph's obedience I don't know if y'all remember everything that I said previously, and if you don't, rewind it back. Rewind it back to the part where Joseph was obedient when Potiphar's wife was trying to seduce him. Rewind it back to when he was in the dungeon and the guard trusted him. Rewind it back to when he was in the dungeon and the servants were talking to him about their dreams and he interpreted for them. Rewind it back to when Joseph stewarded all those crops and didn't keep any for himself. Fast forward to this part. Joseph was obedient through all of that. He was obedient through everything. And because of that, God rewarded him, his whole family back. You see how God be making a whole 360? I mean, and even more, because Joseph's family was one of the families that was the cities that needed some food because of the famine. And so whenever Pharaoh told them that they can come, you can come to my spot, you can come to my mansion, and you will have the best of the land and enjoy the fat of the land. He was gonna treat Joseph's family like royalty. Like royalty. Because of Joseph's obedience. Like, I mean, like, I don't know, that's just really heartfelt to me, because like, how is it, like, it just shows, like, good things do happen when you're obedient. Like, you're not just obedient for no reason. You know what I'm saying? And mind you, this is also important. Joseph has been separated from his family for this whole time. For, I think it said when he was 30 years old, that's when he seen King Pharaoh, and that's when he interpreted dream, I believe. But he was 30 years, 30 plus years or whatever. 30 years. Maybe a little less, because, you know, he interpreted a dream and they had to sell him. So 25 years. He didn't have his family. And God gave it back to him. Literally gave it back to him, even beyond measures, even more than our own understanding. You know what I'm saying? So that leads me to Genesis 46:27. With 2 sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family which went into Egypt were 70 in all. And that's a little confusing, but I'll break it down for you. Pharaoh allowed all 70 members of Joseph's family to come and enjoy the best of the land and the fat of the land. God restored Joseph's whole lineage, not just his immediate family, his whole lineage, because of his stewardship, his obedience. This was all part of his purpose. And the fact that Joseph said that back whenever he said, God sent me ahead of you to preserve you for a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. I mean, I just think that's really beautiful, because I mean, you know, for me, we all pray for some of our family members. Me is a little more of my immediate family that I pray for, that I just hope God will restore that relationship one day, you know. And as long as I'm obedient, I just think it's motivating that as long as I'm obedient and I fulfill my purpose just as Joseph did, that God will restore my family, or he'll do things beyond my own understanding, beyond measures. You know what I'm saying? And I think I just look forward to things like that. And I think it's also important that it may not even happen in my generation. It may not even happen while I'm alive. But as long as it happens, because I was obedient in general, even if my kids get to experience that, if my grandkids get to experience that, I'll be happy. And I just want to encourage you guys. I hope you guys got something out of this. It's like I said, God shared it with me, and I just think it shows a lot of the things that we go through as Christians and how to live a successful Christian life in a sense, because Joseph's family didn't want him. And then he ended up getting sold. And I mean, that had to hurt, guys. That really had to hurt. It wasn't just something that he brushed off his shoulder. I mean, yeah, he ended up being a servant. Or, people trusted him with great things, and he was a captain, King Pharaoh's captain servant. I mean, that still had to hurt. Some people hold on to a lot of things. Some people hold on to a lot of anger, and they won't allow themselves to enjoy what God has given them or what has planned for them because of what was hurt in the past. And let me tell you, this is also an example of God will take all things bad and make it for your good. God took what was bad and he made it good, and he made it sovereign, and he made it full. You know what I'm saying? And even when, like I said, it pertains to our lives, because Joseph was in a hidden period when he was in the dungeon. He was in a hidden period. God was doing what he needed to on the top, in the little mansion. God was doing what he needed to do while Joseph was being hidden, and he was being his endurance was being built up, his patience was being built up, his faith was being built up, you guys. I mean, he's in the dungeon. He may never get out. I really, if I'm correct, I think you're supposed to be put to death when you try and have sex with somebody's wife, especially of that stature. He should have been dead. Joseph literally should have been dead, and he didn't have any reason to think he got out, but he had faith, and he was stewarded in all of those things. And I feel like sometimes we take advantage of the hiding season when God is doing all these things to us. And I've heard a quote that it says, sometimes we think God is preparing us for it, but sometimes he's preparing it for us. And that just goes to show that the time was right, and King Pharaoh called on Joseph, and Joseph was ready. He was ready. And then he ended up getting his whole family back, you guys. His whole family. And some of us don't even see things like, I've never even had a family reunion before, but to just see my whole family come together and be restored, and to know that my brothers changed, you guys, that was important too. I didn't say that, but Joseph tested his brothers to see if he changed, to see if they changed. And they did change. And God rewarded his brothers too, in a sense, with the land and them being able to enjoy the royalty. It was Joseph's obedience, but because the brothers had a change of heart and who they were no longer conniving, they were no longer manipulative, and they defended their younger brother Benjamin. They defended him. And I just think that it's such a great story, and it's such a powerful story about how we can take purpose, we can take temptation, obedience, stewardship, and restoration, all in the story of Joseph. And this is just what I've got. There's probably so much more, and I'm pretty sure next time I read it, God will reveal something different to me. And that's the great thing about the Bible, that whenever I read it, God gave me revelation, that when you seek God, he will be found. When you seek God, he will be found. I read the Bible, and honestly, I had an understanding of it, but God gave me all of this, the rest of this, and I didn't even look at it like that. And I'm like, wow, thank you, God. But like I said, I just want you guys to take all of these and look inward, how it pertains to your life and how you can just live a better life for Christ. I hope this motivated you guys, and I hope you love this. I'm just being obedient. I'm just trying to steward the little things, and you guys know the rest. I don't know how this works, you guys. I'm being honest with y'all, but let me know in the comments what y'all thought, what I could have did better of, what could have changed, what y'all did like, and honestly, I just want this to be a family. I'm gonna respond to you guys. I'm gonna respond in the comments, whatever you guys say. If you guys want me to go more in depth about something, I'm gonna pray about it, and I'm gonna come back to you guys and let y'all know what God was speaking to me about and what he laid on my heart to tell you, if that happens. And it's important to get your own discernment. I think that it means so much more when you get your own discernment with God, because it just sticks with you. And it just shows you have an intimate relationship with God when he's discerning things for you. Like I said, you guys, just let this video, even if it doesn't pertain to your life right now, and honestly I feel like the whole story has different seasons, so I feel like it does pertain to your life in somehow. But if it doesn't, you're like, oh, this was a cute video, you know, save it. And there's been plenty of videos, you guys, I watched a year later, I'm like, ooh, I didn't necessarily need that the year before, the year prior, but the year later when I watched it, I'm like, oh, wow, God, that was some okay. But just save it, guys. I just ask that you save it. And I like I said, I hope that you guys are blessed by this, and have a wonderful week. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I love you guys. Bye.